All right, here we are on the Teachers Talking Hoops podcast. We've returned. We are this much closer to Adam becoming a teacher. And it feels like it's a long time ago that we talked, at least on the podcast. But I want to say we talked after I decided to change schools.
Yes,
But yeah, that sounds right that we talked about it on like the podcast.
yes. But
Yeah,
before you started uh practice with your new team, you had just come
yeah,
out of the transfer portal, so you were
yes.
still adjusting to
Yes.
campus
Let
life.
let me tell you how many NIL offers I had. I can't give I'm not allowed to give specific teams. But I had offers from uh including my current team. I had offers for
Mhm.
this indoor track season from one so including my current team, one, two, three, four, five. I had five offers on the table.
Did you take any?
I took one. I took the one. Talk about NIL. I took the one that didn't pay any money. All the other ones paid money, but I took the one at East Long Meadow because it was a better. I don't know. I was gonna get to meet the kids more, and so it made
Mhm.
more sense.
Yeah.
I took the long term. I took the better situation versus the rebuild.
Okay.
East Long Meadow is gonna be a better. I'm gonna be able to jump right in with some successful kids as opposed to trying to like rebuild a program.
Okay.
Which rebuild a program is okay when you're in the school system,
Right.
but I had some inner city schools that wanted me to come, and it's too hard to rebuild that program.
Mm.
It's too hard to rebuild a distance program, but a program in general, if you're not in that school, because
Right.
you can't get kids to come out if you're not in the
Hmm.
school.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. That's fair.
So there might be I heard there might be future earning opportunities on the table. But
Okay. Okay. So
currently,
that's why.
I'm just a volunteer.
Okay.
You know, you gotta work your way up. You can't just
Exactly.
you gotta pay your dues. Oh, so
Hmm.
speaking, I meant to tell you, I got a surprise for Adam, but I didn't mean to tell you. I was listening to the Iron College Basketball podcast with Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish, and someone asked him a question in the mailbag about who is the most jacked coach
Hmm.
in the country, and I think they ended up deciding on T.J. Ossenberger.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. He is jacked.
but they said that if this was a couple years ago, and I don't know how long a couple years ago is, they said or at least Gary Parrish said 100% the number one seed would have been Frank Martin.
I wonder. I
He said
wonder
Frank
if
Martin was like secretly like muscular back in the day.
look this up. I don't know how jacked he does. I mean, he is a big guy. Um,
Yeah, he's a big dude. And you imagine at some point, to Frank Martin like 2000, or Frank Martin like under Kansas State. Yeah, you got to imagine
probably.
like he filled out his frame probably. I googled Frank Martin and in came like a black boxer. So and that guy is Jack. So
Maybe he was talking about him. I don't know. But
yeah, it's tough because Frank Martin's a suit guy, so
yes, it's
you don't really know what's underneath that suit.
right. It's tough when he's a suit guy.
Yeah, and as we've talked about, like I appreciate the suit. I'm a big fan of looking the part. Now I'm just googling pictures of Frank. I googled Frank Martin, Kansas State, and all that's come up is pictures of just Frank Martin yelling, like yelling to no one, yelling at the refs, yelling at his players. It's just Frank Martin yelling.
I I don't know. I feel like when I'm a coach, I'm not gonna go with the suit. I feel like I'll go with the quarter zip and the dress pants.
Yeah, the young guys don't go with the suits anymore.
A little more comfortable.
I noticed even the coach at the school I'm at, the basketball coach at the school I'm at, um,
Oh,
during
Coach
the day
Ava.
when yeah, he wears. what I assume he probably wears for the games. He wears just like a polo and just like the dress pants.
Yeah.
And it fits him. He's a taller guy, kind of skinny.
Yeah.
Like like he wears a polo that fits his size.
Mm,
Um, but I mean, I always try to dress up on meet days,
mm,
especially if it's a big meet. I always tried
mhm,
to. I mean, I always wore a tie anyways, but I always tried to look a little extra
mm.
special.
Okay.
I think it shows an importance to the meet that then the athletes
Mm,
believe that if it's important to you through how you dress, it's important to them.
okay. That makes sense.
And it's also if your team doesn't do well, at least people are like, man, like look how well dressed that guy is.
There's my thing though, is like if I wear the suit and the tie, I already know the suit is coming off. The
Yeah,
jacket comes off, and then the tie just automatically comes off.
yeah,
That's how it usually goes. So
yeah, yeah.
we'll
And
see.
I guess
Maybe,
with basketball, you're coaching a lot harder than you are in track and cross country. And if you got the full suit, you're gonna get sweaty.
yeah. And you're in an indoor gym. The long sleeves and the tie gives you a little more warmth outside.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I got my surprise for you.
okay.
Check this out. Boom. I know you can't read it that well, but you'll know. Boom,
Some research.
boom. Oh, I did
Wow.
research.
Wow.
I did research.
Okay.
3 pages worth of
Okay.
research.
Wow.
I didn't have a lot of time. I fell asleep last night when I meant to do research, but I did research from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock today.
Okay.
I got three. I have a new year, new podcast. I have the template for the order in which our podcast is going to go.
Okay.
No more random discussions. Like we know it's
Okay.
going here and here and here.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I got it set up. You're gonna carry the conversations, and I'm gonna set up
And
the
you get the
direction.
setup. Okay.
All right. So for the first podcast of the 2024-2025 college basketball season, I wrote down a bunch of stuff. But we've been trying to podcast for a while, and it just hasn't been able to come together.
Mhm.
And I think we both thought it was appropriate at the time, but we just didn't get a chance to do it. That we needed a podcast about Tony Bennett,
Mhm.
and so that's where I want to start.
Okay.
I want to start on a kind of little recap of Tony Bennett, but I also want to. I think at some point we should have an NIL podcast, but I want to
Yeah.
briefly touch upon the thing that appears made Tony Bennett leave the sport.
Mhm.
And I think NIL is an important discussion because Tony Bennett could have quit last year. He
Yep.
could have quit over the summer. Something has to have happened.
Mhm.
Maybe not a big thing, but something happened in the last month or two
Mhm.
that made him realize I don't really want to do this, but I think I can do it to the point of I just can't do this anymore. Right. And
Mhm.
whether that is someone that was making $50,000 a year told Tony Bennett that, like, hey, I'm not playing unless you pay me another $50,000 a year. Who knows what it was, but it's something, or someone threatened to transfer, right? A guy
Mhm.
says, hey, coach, like, you didn't play me in uh, the scrimmage that we had. I'm going to transfer. But before we get into kind of the negative, how should the college basketball world remember Tony Bennett?
Um, Tony Bennett was a winner who won the right way. You know, he and Virginia had, these pillars of respect, humility, um, hard work, effort, you know, and I think that he's going to be remembered as one of the few coaches who won the right way and had an old school style. I mean, doesn't matter where he coached at, Washington State and Virginia, he won. He went 69 and 33 at Washington State. He went 364 and 136 at Virginia. Three-time National Coach of the Year, four-time ACC, one-time Pac-12, all those accolades. But I think what we're going to remember Tony Bennett for is not only rebuilding these programs, but doing it in the way that holds the athletes accountable and isn't about the ego. It's there, there wasn't really a guy on any of his Virginia teams that you were like, oh, that's one guy, right? His teams were five guys all playing the right way as a team. He's one of the last team coaches, if you want to put that in quotes, that left the game. And, it's incredibly sad that he left. He was definitely one of those coaches that I looked up to because just the way he handled himself on and off the court, it was sad to see. And like you said, it was NIL that drove him out. He hinted at that during his press conference that he's no longer the guy to do it because of the state of college basketball. And I think, like you said, that's a further conversation that needs to be looked at because it's so sad when you have NIL money and NIL deals and NIL brands driving the greatest minds that this basketball world has seen out of the game.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Tony Bennett was that coach that I'm hesitant to even call him an old school coach.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's when your team lost to Virginia, you weren't mad about it.
Right.
Yeah, like you don't maybe you don't like losing to Bill Self. You might respect Bill Self, but like, I don't really want to lose to Bill Self.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know how Kansas is doing this, and but if you lost to Virginia, you sort of just you tipped your hat and you
Yeah.
said, "Man, those guys they outworked us and
Right.
they just beat us."
Mm-hmm. And it's like everybody respected him, and that's the thing you don't see anymore. Is there are very few coaches that get that respect that he got the way he won too. Because I mean, it wasn't a traditional style that he won with.
Hmm.
The defense and then the very slow pace of the game that he wanted to play at, and that worked for so long. And then we kind of saw last year that started to catch up to him.
Hmm.
And there were questions too in the offseason whether he was going to do it or not. And he even said that he questioned it, but he decided one more year we'll come back. And then he signed the extension, and then it just suddenly all came apart when he said they went away. Him and his wife went away for fall break.
Yeah.
But I mean, just a truly great coach, and even better person. And I don't think Virginia could have wanted it any better than they got from Tony Bennett.
Yeah, and I think the last year or two, Virginia struggled a little bit more, at least kind of in the regular season. But I
Yeah.
think that goes back to NIL, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what a couple podcasts I was listening to were talking about. For Tony Bennett to be successful, if he's going to be stubborn and say this is going to be a defense oriented team,
Mm-hmm.
kind of similar to what the issues Jim Boeheim was struggling with a little bit towards the end of
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse.
Yep.
Um, if this is going to be defense oriented, these kids need to come as freshmen
Right.
and they need to stay till least junior year. It can't be a transfer in and out kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing because they're not going to be able to learn to play the defense that Tony Bennett wants them to play.
Right. And I think it's because I mean, all his guys at Virginia were at the very least 2 year guys.
Hmm.
But most of them were all 3 4 year guys, and that's just not the landscape of college
Yeah,
basketball anymore.
yeah.
And I think it was very hard for him to get players because you have to sacrifice so much when you're at Virginia. It's not a one guy, takes all the shots, fast tempo place, and I don't think a lot of guys want to be held accountable like that anymore, which I think leads me to see that there had to have been some disconnect somewhere
Yeah.
because, like you said, it was very sudden. Something must have happened. It's just too bad that right before the season this took place.
Because I think you see that in high school sports too, and I see it in high
Hmm.
school basketball being in schools
Right,
with kids thinking that like there's everyone thinks to go in the NBA, right?
right,
Everyone thinks to go in D1, and
right,
there's just like this illusion with D1. I heard kids talking about today. I was with my daughter, and there was these boys running around the track talking about like D1. Someone mentioned Bates College, which is a great college,
right,
and someone's like, "Oh yeah, but that's not D1,"
hmm
and it's like there's so many schools out there,
right,
and everyone thinks that they're going to be like the greatest of the great. And so you get
Right.
these college basketball players who think that after 1 year, like, so I was listening to a Duke podcast this morning, and they're talking about Caleb Foster a little bit.
Mm,
And in my mind, unless somehow Caleb Foster has this magical year,
right.
I think he's got to come back a year because
Hmm.
I liken him to like a Jeremy Roach and a Quinn Cook, a guy that can maybe play in the NBA,
Mm,
but he's so small. He's
right.
got to just stay in college for 4 years,
Hmm.
try to build up enough accolades, and then see where he can go. Like these
Yeah.
guys that are, if you're a 5-star recruit out of college or out of high school, all that really means is that you were just, I mean, you were really good,
Right.
but there's a lot of other really good people.
Hmm.
And if you don't have something that sets you apart,
Hmm.
then it's like, yes, you were a 5-star because I guess what you did on like the club circuit and AU and stuff, but like
Right.
you were winning like these high school games, and
Right.
those guys you're going against, they're they're just not that good,
Hmm.
right? In the grand scheme of things.
Right. And
And so
it's
everyone wants to go to the NBA, and like not everyone can go to the NBA.
right. And it's especially hard too because I mean, you look at the stats, and this is for all of NCAA basketball. 3% of your varsity high school basketball players play NCAA college basketball. It doesn't matter what division. And then out of Division 1, 2, and 3, only 1.2% go to the NBA, which is probably 1.19% out of 1.2, or sorry, 1.99 out of 2 are from your D1. So it's
Mhm.
very hard. And I don't think, like you said, that kids know what it takes to be able to play at the collegiate level. Because it's even like, for me, like Division 3, like there's so much that goes into just D3
Mhm.
that it's like D1, this is your life. Like you are practicing, lifting, playing for 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yep.
And, you go into a program like Virginia, there's a bunch of other expectations that you have on top of that Tony Bennett puts on you. A lot of kids don't want to do that anymore because they want to come in and they want a coach who will let them off the hook
Yep.
and do whatever. Like that's why you see all these unsuccessful teams towards the bottom of college basketball because kids don't want to go to a program that will hold them accountable. And it's
Yep.
like they want to go somewhere where they can just play, build up their stock, and then, you know, go off to the NBA.
Yep.
But it's like the reality is Cooper Flag is what? Once in a generation, right? Like if you really think about it, Cooper Flag is the biggest kid since what, Zion, and that was what,
Yep.
I don't know, 7 years ago.
Yeah, about six,
It's
7 years
like
ago. Yeah.
unless you're one of those kids, like you don't have a clear cut path
Yep.
to the NBA. That's just the reality of it. So you need to build yourself in the college game.
Yeah. And I mean, there was. I just saw Kansas. Kansas just got a commit from the number 3
Hmm.
recruit for next year,
Yep.
Jaron Peterson. And
Hmm.
the quote on ESPN that I was reading earlier was talking about, because it reminded me of this. He was saying how he's excited to go there next year and is excited to be coached by Bill Self, and
Hmm.
prepare himself for the draft and win as much as he can. But the biggest thing I took out of that was, and he's like, and I'm not looking ahead, but I said you are looking ahead. Like in your quote, you
Right.
said this is going to help me prepare for the NBA draft. Like in your
Right.
mind, you're going to be in college for 1 year, which if
One
you're the
year. Yeah.
number 3 recruit, oh, you probably are
Sure.
going to be there for 1 year. But that that's not a good mindset for a college pro. It's a
Hmm.
good mindset for you, but it's not a
Right.
good mindset for a college program where a kid comes
Right.
in, because I found that this issue happened with Duke sometimes, and we see it with other programs where everyone is, you say you're for the team, but if your ultimate goal is to make the NBA,
Hmm.
you're not willing to sacrifice
Right.
statistics because you're worried. You'd rather your team hopefully make the NCAA tournament, but like you'd be
Hmm.
okay with your team getting knocked down the first round if
Right.
you could average 21 points
Hmm.
versus 16 points.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like so many guys, like the example that comes to my mind is John Calipari's teams in Kentucky. And
Hmm.
this is nothing against John Calipari. Like those teams were great. But when you have
Yes, John
guys
Cotter,
that
we
are,
like you. In case you want to come on the
yes,
podcast, we're fans.
You have like the 11, 12 guys coming off the bench playing like 8 minutes a game, scoring like 2.5 and 5 points a game. And then they're like, okay, sure, I could return to Kentucky, be a starter, or I could just go to the NBA. I'm going to go to the NBA. And it's like, why? Like, sure, like I love betting on yourself, but why would you not return to get better, to up your stock and have it easier for you? Because it's even like in that Darren Peterson article, they talk
Hmm.
about how he's the highest recruit since Josh Jackson. Where's Josh Jackson now?
Yeah.
He didn't have a long career in the league, which brings you to the point is unless you're a clear cut star, you have to work for everything. Because even what's his name for the Hawks, Zachary Richichet, he said he figured out once he got to the league, he's just another guy. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter how dominant you are in college, high school, anywhere. It's this game is so physical now and so different and so athletic that why would you not want a coach who's going to push you to get you ready for that?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, all right. So we like I said, we'll do an NIL talk at
Mm.
some point. We don't need
Yeah,
to belabor the fact. I mean, I am going to come back to NIL. Actually, no, I did have some stuff about NIL. We were
we'll put like the whole G League thing in that too. That's another thing
yeah,
that goes with that.
and we were kind of on the Tony Bennett thing, but I did write stuff down about NIL on my notes.
Okay.
Um, you know, so so Cooper Flag. So
Mm.
I was on this website that is values how much a player is worth.
Okay.
Not necessarily how much they're actually making, but valuing like how much worth they bring to like the team.
Sure.
And so Cooper Flag was valued at 2.6 million, which I
Okay.
would argue Cooper Flag's probably making more than that just
Yeah.
through like the New Balance, and he just got signed.
Gatorade.
Gatorade, yes, yeah,
Yep.
like to New Balance and Gatorade, and that might not mean 2 million in college. Like maybe they
Sure.
do a thing where we're gonna pay you, maybe somewhere in the contract, we're gonna pay you $500,000, and if you are a top 10 pick, like we think you're gonna be,
Yeah.
once you get drafted, we will pay you $5 million a year after that, or
Right.
something like
Right.
that. Because I did read something else that said um, it was a breakdown on the NCAA's website about how much money players are making, and this was sports in general. And it said out of all the deals that are disclosed that we know about, only about 10% of deals over $10,000 are disclosed. So only 10% of people making over $10,000 do we actually know how much those people are making, right? We can estimate that how much people are making, but we as the consumer or the watcher of the product don't really know how much most of these guys are making unless because this has been a big sticking point. Coleman Hawkins
Yeah.
has been rumored, and I don't think it's really a rumor. I think it's fact rumor, that he's making about $2 million to go play at Kansas State.
Yes.
Because he was one of the guys. He kind of held out, right? A lot of other guys got picked up in the transfer portal, and it was sort of like, all right, here's the last best guy, and if you want him, you got to pay some money to get him.
Right.
And it makes you think. I like I don't watch as much college basketball as I used to, just because having the two kids, and so
Right.
I watch all my Duke stuff, and I try to like pay attention to other things.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I didn't until I was listening to podcasts. I didn't know who Coleman Hawkins was,
Right.
and he's getting $2 million a year.
And they also lured Oyensu from Kentucky and Achor Achor from Sanford. And
Hmm.
it's I'll have this whole rant when we do the NIL podcast, but I'm so sick of that. It's guys are just jumping around. I mean,
Yep.
again, I don't blame them. You're a college kid. What college kid's gonna turn down $2 million
Yeah.
to go to a new school? Like, I probably wouldn't. But
Yeah.
again, I'm not in that position. So it's like this is ruining the landscape of college basketball.
Hmm.
This needs to be looked at because this is a problem. Because again, you're like Tony Bennett and you're an honest coach who wants to do things the right way. You're not going to dole out $2 million
Yeah.
just to get a kid who you think might be good for your program. Because how many times have we seen NIL dole out and the kid's not a good fit, ends up sitting
Yeah.
the bench? You've wasted $2 million as a college now.
Yeah.
God forbid, what if Coleman Hawkins goes down with an injury?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think this really needs to be looked at. I think there needs to be a limit of how
Yeah.
much you can offer players, because if you're not a Power Five school, you're not getting the players
Yeah.
because you don't have the budget to pay these kids, and it's very
Yeah.
unfortunate for all these other good colleges. Like you take the A10 for example, not a Power Five, but still a great league.
Mm-hmm.
The Ivy, great league, not a Power Five, but you're not going to get those kids because you can't afford to pay them, which is
Yeah.
so unfortunate for college sports.
I mean, that goes into the one of the other things I wrote down. I didn't write down a ton more, but I wrote down Drexel, right? So in
Hmm.
Pennsylvania, Drexel, they spent $20 million on just athletics in general last year,
Hmm.
and like that wasn't really including NIL. I'm sure some of that was
Hmm.
NIL,
Yeah,
but that was just in terms of like having to send people on planes to go to like
sure.
a game somewhere, and
Hmm.
like giving them the food that like when I was at Westfield State. I don't know what's like at Elms. When I was at Westfield State and we'd go to a meet, they would give us $10,
Yeah,
right?
that
And
yeah,
yeah, so I know like when some of my foreign runners, when they're that are running D1, when they stay overnight, I'm sure they probably get, 50 or $100 or
yeah.
whatever for a trip so they can buy dinner and like breakfast and stuff. So I mean, if we let's take out a couple $1 million, let's drop 28 million to 20 million. So if Drexel's spending $20 million,
Right,
not including NIL, on athletics in general, and now you got someone at Drexel that says, "Hey, I give me $2 million to come play basketball." I'm already paying $20 million for like the and within that Drexel thing, I wrote down the head coach of the basketball team makes $460,000,
right,
and he's the so it was two weird things. One, I was like, does he need to make $460,000, right? Like, and like two, he's the 11th highest Drexel employee, which then made me think, who else at Drexel is making more than
right,
$460,000?
right.
Um, but I was talking about this in my class one time. The cost of college is drastically increasing,
Yep.
and Danny Hurley just got new contract where he's making what like $4 to $6 million a year, somewhere in that, I think.
So
Uh,
he's 60 or 50 million.
yes, he's on about eight
So
almost.
yeah,
Yes, about 8 million.
eight and a half almost. Yeah.
So I mean, who's paying for that? The kids
Right.
that go to UConn,
Right. Yeah.
like
Basically. Yeah. That's what
some
you're.
boosters and stuff like that. But like I
Mhm.
mean, the like without a doubt, like UConn's tuition is going to go up.
Right. And you take a school like Drexel who's doling out 20 million. Can you imagine what, Duke and
Hmm.
Kansas and Kentucky and Arkansas and UConn are doling out?
Yep.
Probably five, six times that amount.
Yeah.
And who's paying for it? The
Yep.
college students. Well, actually,
Yep.
not them. Their parents.
Yeah. And you add in, you look at now the ACC,
Yep.
right? And the changing landscape of that with now Stanford and
Travel. Yep.
SMU.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think what people this is where people are afraid that these other sports are going to go down, because it's not just like Stanford just had to travel to, I think it was North Carolina,
Yeah.
for ACC cross country the ACC cross country championship.
Hmm.
So it's not just the basketball team go around, like the
Right.
swim team has to go somewhere, the volleyball team has to go
Hmm.
somewhere.
Right. Like, what do you do if if I'm the Stanford men's basketball team? What happens if you have to play BC on a Monday, up in Chestnut Hill? You have to play California on a Thursday night, and then you have to go all the way back and play somebody like Clemson on a Saturday afternoon, because
Hmm.
those three game weeks sometimes happen.
Yep.
Just like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I don't agree with that decision to move Stanford and Cal to the ACC. I get it because it's a Power Five conference, but you got to think of your athletes here,
Hmm.
because that is not easy to travel to.
Especially like in general, but especially with Stanford and Cal, because
Right,
those are really academic based schools.
right. I I mean, this wouldn't make sense either, but Stanford in the Ivy League to me makes more sense than
Yep.
the
Hmm.
ACC. Um, but it could also be vice versa too. If you're Duke and you have to go play Stanford and then you have to go play BC and then you have to go
Yep.
back out to play Cal, that because some those Saturday Monday games happen.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's a very fragile um kind of mess that the NCAA is trying to deal with right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very much like they didn't regulate enough, and
Right.
so now they're letting. I mean, they're letting the inmates run the asylum at this
Yeah.
point.
They and the sad thing is they have no choice.
Yep.
It's because they've already let this go on for so long
Yeah.
that it's going to be such a huge cleanup project
Yeah.
to take care of that.
Yeah.
I
Because I
just
think everyone agrees that it's ridiculous, right? Like
right.
it's sure like these schools are making a ton of money off these guys,
Hmm.
fine, but no kid in college should be making like $1 or $2 million a year.
Right.
Like one, he's playing a sport, two, he's in college, and then think about two, like what he's either what he's doing with that $1 million or the people that are taking advantage of him to like
Right.
take that $1 million from him.
Right.
Like,
Because
'cause I mean, technically, you're already getting like if granted we all get scholarships, right? Most people are
hmm
getting scholarships and go to college,
right.
but like if you are like a Tyrese Proctor,
hmm
you are getting I don't know like $80,000 a year from Duke already
hmm
because they're letting you go to school there for free.
right. And the thing is too is you really think about this too. How many classes are you like? You're not
Hmm.
really going to class. You're
Yep.
just getting paid to play basketball,
Yeah.
and that's it. And $2 million for a college kid, I mean, he's going to be set for life.
Yeah.
So, as a head coach, obviously you want to get the best of the best. But if I'm one of those schools like I don't know, BC, your bottom teams in your
Hmm.
Power Five conference, wouldn't you want to spread out that NIL a little
Yep.
more and get a bunch of guys who will play cohesively instead of two good players and
Because
have the
I think
rest of
I
your
think
team
back to when
suck?
I was in college, right? And you think back to where you are now. Like, imagine if someone offered you $20,000 a year to
Right.
play basketball, you'd be like, "This is amazing!" Like,
Right. Right. I'd be on a plane and see ya, but that's not where we're at.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
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 yeah. You're right. I mean, it's that money. Um, yeah, it's changing
because
everything at
even
this
Nick
point.
Nick Saban said it. If you can't pay them, you're not getting them.
Yep.
Then that's
Yeah,
the
and then
sad.
you have the competition that we saw it the first time we saw it was at Miami with the little short point guard at Miami. It was Isaiah Wong who was there, and
Mhm.
they brought in
Charlie Moore.
yes, and Isaiah. It was like the beginning of NIL, and
Yeah.
Isaiah Wong was making a little bit of money, I think.
hmm
But then they brought this guy in, and he was
And he
making.
was
It was like
yeah
publicized that he was making like 500,000, whatever.
yeah
And Isaiah Wong said, "I'm gonna go someplace else if you don't give me
right
money."
right. Sad. It's
Yeah,
up for further to this. This will be a very long rant when
yeah.
we do that podcast.
So I mean, I got a bunch of stuff to not a bunch of stuff to talk about, but some stuff to talk about. But as we are a Duke podcast, I felt the need to start with Duke
Duke's
destroying Arizona State.
bashing. Yeah, that.
Um, now, Ken Palm is not accurate, right? Arizona State was not a good basketball team last year. They're
Well, they
probably
don't look
not
like
going to be a
one
good
this year
basketball team
either.
this year,
So,
right? But they are 70 in Ken Palm, so they are a top 100 team in Ken Palm. To beat a top 100 team by over 50 points.
yeah, that was really bad.
Now, what I've noticed with Duke in their first two in their preseason games is they start off a little bit slow. Like Lincoln was in it for a little bit. Arizona State was never in it, but Duke wasn't. Duke was stopping them on defense, but they were not efficient on offense initially. And then when they got to the second half in both games, Duke's 3-point shot really took off.
Yeah,
And
that
so I
was
think,
yeah.
well, I was going to say, I think it's skewed a little bit. Yes, they beat them by 50, but part is because they just got so hot from the 3-point line.
Yeah. So Duke shot 50% from three.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you can thank Khan and Caleb for that.
Hmm.
But geez, talk about a bashing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
that wasn't even close.
Bobby Hurley was like, I think it said something like, my it's great that I was able to bring like my kids here, and
Yeah.
like thank God they're too young to they'll even like know what's going on.
Well, he what did he oh, I just read something about how like he was happy to be back but until like the game started and
Yeah.
then that was it.
Yep.
Cooper Flag only played 20 minutes too. That's the thing. Is all these guys
Yeah.
only had to play one half.
Oh, I know. I've got it in my notes.
So
They so Duke had 10 players play double digit minutes. And that's their team, right? They have 13 guys on their team, 10 guys that people are like, how are they going to get minutes? And then the 3 guys that I think are now technically scholarship players, but were walk ons basically. Um, and it so I mean, I guess my question about Duke, I didn't have a lot written down about Duke. I'll mention later in like our Final Four stuff. But they had 10 players play double digit minutes, and in the day and age of NIL, right? You have Darren Harris and Isaiah Evans are probably your 9-10 guys right now who are McDonald All Americans. And probably when they were playing high school, probably thought they were just going to go straight to the league. So how? I guess my two questions are: just can Duke play 10 guys, and how do you stop Darren Harris from transferring? I think because I don't want to get too much into this, but here's the thing with the new college landscape. I think I'm 99% sure you can just transfer and leave and go play someplace else now. I think they changed that rule. Like I think if Darren Harris wanted to transfer to Kansas and Kansas admitted him as a student, he can just go play at Kansas now.
so I think they can play 10 guys. Will they? I'm not sure because this game was
Yeah.
so out of hand that
You don't think
why
all the
would
games are going to be won by 50? That's what I'm banking on.
I don't so actually you're not going to like this, but they came out with the North Carolina is actually projected to win the ACC
Oh, that's funny
this
because in my notes I have notes about how UNC is going to be trash this year.
Okay, well, we'll we'll I wouldn't I mean I don't think you needed notes for that, but um I think you can play 10 games. Cooper Flag's going to play more than 20 games. I mean, sorry, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um so there's going to be some shifting around there. But I think it's all based on matchups too. When you play your, crappier teams, of course, everybody's going to play. But I think you can play 10 guys, but they're all not going to we're not going to see the equal correlation of minutes like we saw that game. Darren Harris may get 6, and Isaiah Evans may get 5. And then, you have those extra minutes that you give to Khan and Tyrese and Cooper. And I think as the season goes down, we'll kind of see it wane to 8, 7,
Hmm.
maybe, occasionally 9, um, because that's just the way
Yeah.
Shire and most college basketball players, I mean, coaches roll. But again, 10 is a usual rotation, but as that, season and wanes along, and if you're not seeing that production that we're seeing now, I wouldn't be surprised if he shored up his bench because Duke's going to go through their rough patches just like everybody else does. Doesn't mean they're going to lose, but they're going to face
Hmm.
adversity. And as a coach, you want to see how each of your players deals with that adversity, and that's going to determine later on who those minutes are going to go to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think 10's gonna be tough.
With
I
this
think
team, yes.
there's gonna be injuries.
Right.
I foresee Watch
Hmm.
getting maybe a little banged up at some point.
Hmm.
And then you'll get a guard that will just have a
Right.
sprained finger that will take him off
Hmm.
for a game or two,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean it's just definitely I so hmm, I'm not. I have something else. I'm not going to bring up yet. I'm going to pull it back later when we get to the All Americans.
Yeah.
Actually, it's coming up relatively soon. Um, yeah, it's coming up soon. Um, yeah. Um, but I'm I am I like the Duke lineup because I like that if you do have someone in a slump or get injured, I feel like particularly on the guard side, particularly with like a Proctor and a Foster,
Uh,
you have Harris, you have Evans, you have James, you have Mason Gillis, you have guys that are going to come in that can do what those guys kind of were expected to do. And, even on the Malawatch and Flag side, you have what's his name there? I keep blanking his name. You have the guy from Syracuse.
Malik Brown.
Um, yeah, who I believe was ACC Defensive Player of the Year last year, right? So imagine having a guy like Cooper Flagg who's just was block city in high school, a guy like
Hmm.
Malowich who's like 7'2" and growing, and then on the bench to replace those guys is the ACC Defensive Player of the Year who led the league in at the very least steals, maybe blocks, and might have not led the league in field goal percentage, but in his freshman and sophomore year, averaged about 68, 69% field goal percentage because he's just dunking the ball. But so that's your guy off the bench, and
Yeah.
so it's very complimentary. Like Shire did a good job of bringing in guys that were good at their schools, but not stars. Like a Malik Brown was very good at Syracuse, but he's not the type of player that's going to have a big head because of
Right.
the style of play that he does.
Hmm.
And Mason Gillis is already used to being six man.
Right.
Sion James is coming from Tulane, so it's like, sure, he was scoring 15 points a game at Tulane, but he's not expecting to come into Duke, and be the top guy because it's
Hmm.
Duke.
Yes.
So they did a good job, I think, building the dynamic of the roster.
Hmm. Yes. And it's just a matter of how much, like you said, where the playing time will go and where who will get it and where that's going to go.
So my transfer. We're gonna shift topics in a second, but my question that shifts the topic is: do you think Duke's the best team in college basketball right now?
Well, they're not ranked number one.
So you think Kansas? I'm gonna go back to Kansas because I don't like Kansas either.
I mean,
I
Duke is.
see. I thought the direction you were gonna go in, which was gonna be our transition sentence, was the best team in college basketball is the defending champions since they're no longer defending champions. And I was going to pivot into UConn.
I mean, we can pivot to UConn. They certainly have the roster to do it again, but they're also number three. So, you know.
So, okay, let me skip ahead to Kansas for a second.
Uh,
Because I had, under our All American question, I had Hunter Dickinson written down to talk
yes.
about why I don't think he's going to be an All American. Why I don't think he's
Okay.
going to be first team All American. Kansas got smacked up by Arkansas, and
Yes, but
Hunter
without.
Dickinson did not play.
Yes.
And he sat on. So we're going back to NIL for a second.
Hmm.
He sat on the bench with a big gold chain on,
Yes, he did.
and I thought he looked stupid.
Hmm.
And I don't. I listened to a podcast that described Hunter Dickinson as the most polarizing player because half the country thinks he's the first team All American, and half the country thinks that Kansas and anyone like Michigan would be better off without him
Hmm.
because he's such a defensive liability.
Hmm.
And when you watch him play, you're like, man, this guy scores points, but I
Hmm.
also think he sucks.
Hmm.
And that's where I'm at with Hunter Dickinson. I'm like, you can't deny what he does, but at the same time, you're like, this guy's not good.
So, do you want me to go back to who I think the best team in college basketball is and continue from there?
I want you to answer. Would you want? Okay, yes, at Elms. Okay, sure. But if you played D1 high level college basketball, would you want Hunter Dickinson on your team?
Well, yes. I don't want
I
Hunter Dick.
wouldn't.
I would. I
I
would.
if Hunter Dickinson entered the transfer portal, I would 100% not want Duke to pick him up.
I would want Hunter. It all depends on your. You don't need him though. That's the thing. It all depends
That's
on your
true.
needs. Like Hunter Dickinson's a good player.
He's got a bad goal chain.
Yes, that was awful, but you can't deny he's a good player.
But you know how I evaluate people off of, like, if
Yes.
you do me wrong one time, I
Yes.
cast you aside.
Right. This is why my next claim you're gonna hate, but I think the best college basketball team right now is Alabama.
I have them ranked. I have them ranked high.
I I think they are the best college basketball team right now. They have got a loaded roster, and I just think they're number one right now because I mean Arkansas also looked really good when they
Yep.
completely smacked Kentucky. I don't
But
think
here's
any.
here's my thing about Arkansas. Arkansas is just Kentucky, right? Like, I mean, like,
Well,
and
I mean, not necessarily some, but not all of them.
I mean, but I don't know if I trust Calipari anymore.
Uh,
Not John. We love you. We want you on the
this
podcast.
this team looks good, even though they lost TCU. Yeah, yesterday, but it's okay. Um,
I mean,
whatever.
spoiler. I do have John L. Davis on my potential All American list.
You do? I just if I had to pick one person from that team, I'd pick DJ Wagner over him. I don't know. I mean, I get it. It was his first scrimmage, but I wasn't impressed with him against Kansas.
So yeah, I mean, so we'll go back to Alabama because I do like Alabama.
Hmm.
Back to UConn.
Okay.
I do you think Duke beat Arizona State by 53 to send a message to Danny Hurley? I sure hope
No,
so.
I
I
don't
hope
think
so.
so.
Like in my dream world, that's why in my dream world they were like we could win this by 30, but screw Danny Hurley
They, what does that have to do? There's no correlation there.
because I hate Danny Hurley. You know
Duke
what?
doesn't.
I don't want Dan Hurley on the podcast
I do.
because he would
Duke,
swear at me.
but you probably would. I
So I wrote. Here's what I wrote about UConn. I wrote two questions for you. The first was how good can Alex Carabin be?
mhm,
Because I think I foresee he's on my potential. So I wrote 10 guys
mhm.
to potentially be All Americans. I wrote his
Yep,
name down as one.
yep. Second question.
Um, what about Liam McNeely? I
Okay.
did watch Liam McNeely in the I think it was like the McDonald's All Star game. I think that's where I
Yes.
watched him play.
Mhm.
And I wrote down Liam McNeely and I asked, is he better than Con Knipple? And are either one of them Reed Shepard?
This is a crazy comparison we're going here.
No,
Um,
I've heard a lot of people say Con Knipple is this year's Reed Shepard.
so
And I think one obviously it has to do with the fact that he's white, right? Like that. But I think also Knipple's ability to use his body and not just shoot threes, and
mhm,
also to be able to get into the lane. And also Reed Shepard is a little bit underrated. Con
right,
Knippel is a little bit underrated. Um, I wonder, and but Liam McNeely is also another guy that he's not. Liam McNeely's not built like Cooper Flag.
right,
He's got a little more meat to him.
right. So to answer,
You don't like the Con Knippel Reed Shepard comparison?
well, there's two different positions. So to answer to your first question is I also do think Alex Caravan can be an All-American because he is so important to UConn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Both offensively and defensively, he's very important. But again, we have to see that next step from him. We saw it in his sophomore year. Dan Hurley's going to depend on him a lot
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, he started all his freshman and sophomore year. So I do think Alex Caravan is a potential All-American candidate. He is also one of my guys that is on my watch list because UConn is going to go as far as he leads them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he doesn't need to score 25 points a game, but he needs to just continue doing what he does, which is lead. To answer your second question, Liam McNeely and Con Kneppel are two very good players. Now, there's a little bit of a rumor going around that Liam McNeely is a better shooter than Con.
Who told you that? Dana Hurley?
No, he did not tell me that. Liam McNeely was also rated higher than Con
Which is
coming out
what
of high
makes
school.
Con Reed Shepard.
No, Con is not Reed Shepard. Con is just a shooting guard. But I guess if you want to say
That plays
who,
defense and gets into the
okay,
lane.
so who's in a better position right now? I'd say Con because Liam McNeely's probably going to come off the bench. I don't know about. We're going to have to circle back to the Reed Shepard comparison. I don't have an answer for you there yet.
We'll January
Con
1st.
Kneppel, Con Kneppel. My comparison would be Dalton Connect
Okay, I'll take it.
with Con Kneppel. So
I'll take
that's
it.
my comparison.
Here's what I like about this year's Duke's team. We're back. We're back at Duke. Um,
It all
is
circles back.
Khan is like a farm boy that is so what I like about this year's Duke team is the connection they have, and Khan is so soft spoken and such a good player, but you can tell he's just going to like play hard basketball.
Yep.
And then Cooper Flag is such a throwback that I listened to a podcast and it was talking about how it was the Brotherhood podcast and they were asking him about his favorite music and they were
Okay.
like, oh well, we know you don't listen to music. So Cooper Flag does not listen to music. I mean, I'm
Okay.
sure he listens to some, but like he doesn't listen to music.
Right.
And I was listening to another podcast that I listened to and they were talking about Countdown to Crazy for Duke
Mm-hmm.
and they were saying, oh, we've heard a rumor that a player did actually have to ask Coach K's daughter, who's in charge of like some sort of like social media thing for Duke.
Mm-hmm.
They had to ask her what song he should pick for his walkout song
Mm-hmm.
because he doesn't listen to music. And I took that as like Cooper Flag is so locked in
That he
that
doesn't care
thi-
about.
this guy is not your typical 17-year-old. Like
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a 17-year-old that can make the NBA or just like he is so far away from what your typical 17-year-old is. And they asked him, they said like what was in the Brotherhood podcast, they asked him a question something about like what is like your what would you be doing right now if you could like pick something? And
Mm-hmm.
he said he'd be back in Maine hanging out with his friends from middle school
Oh wow, that's cool.
because he just wants to like be a normal kid again.
Mm-hmm.
And so like everything I've heard from him say is and you've watched him play, he just plays so hard.
Yeah.
And I think the mix of how hard he plays
Mm-hmm.
and how he's a guy that kind of came on a little bit late. Like he was
Right.
always good,
Mm-hmm.
but came on in terms of being like this generational talent like a
Yeah.
little bit late
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think 12-year-old Cooper Flag was like, I'm gonna be like LeBron James.
Right.
He was like, I love basketball and I'm gonna try to be good at basketball. And so I think 17-year-old Cooper Flag has the same mindset as 12-year-old Cooper Flag,
Right.
which is what's gonna make him great, I think.
Right. And then Cooper Flag next year will be going to the Utah Jazz because they are awful. So Then
Which that
yeah,
that doesn't mean that they're gonna cut
no, he's
cut
starting. He's
Bobcats away.
starting right now. He's starting.
He
Cooper,
did have a good game the other day. I
he
saw
did.
that.
If Cooper Flag is wishing he was in Maine now, just wait till next year. He's
He
gonna
probably
want
would
to get
love if the Celtics drafted him, but he won't fall that
probably,
far.
probably, but that's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
So
Um. So I underneath UConn, I wrote down coaching style, and it was a brief segue from the UConn thing.
okay.
Um. Do you think? Give me a percent.
Mhm.
What percent of players in D1 college basketball would be able to play for Dan Hurley and respond to Dan Hurley?
Hold up. Let me do a little
You
bit of
think? Do you think
math
we're
here.
under 50%?
Oh, for sure. I think we're under 50%. And actually, there's an exact amount. I'm going to look up the number of Division One college basketball players. So, right, flexible roster cap. So there are 5,607 total athletes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 players on the UConn roster divided by 5,607. So only 2.3% of players can handle Dan Hurley.
I'd say 2.35, 2.35
There's
because
your that's your exact number right
Cooper
there.
Cooper Flag was recruited by
Right.
UConn, and I
True.
think Cooper Flag could have played for Dan Hurley.
But on a more serious level, I will say 25% of college basketball players could handle Dan Hurley.
Do you think the other percent would quit or he would cut them? Not cut them per se, but be like, you don't belong here. You can't play for me.
Oh, I'm sure he would tell them they don't belong here, and then
Yeah,
they would just transfer.
yeah,
He's the type of guy that I could totally see and walk up to and be like, "You're not playing here, so just
yeah,
transfer." I could so see that.
yeah.
There's a couple guys that you can just tell that
Hmm.
they're definitely going to do that.
All right. So I wrote down players first. I did All Americans first.
Hmm.
So here's my watch list.
Okay.
Um, I don't have Hunter Dickinson on my watch list. I wrote down
Okay.
Hunter Dickinson is on most people's All American watch list, but do you trust him or Kansas?
Hmm.
They're number one, uh, but didn't look like, or I didn't like the look of him on the bench against against Arkansas.
That has nothing to do with it.
So, so I hated his gold chain, but I didn't actually look this up. Why did he not play in that game?
He had an injury. I know what it is, um, but now I can't remember off the top of my head.
Now, is Kansas not deep again
I don't.
like they were last year?
Yeah, he. Oh, sprained foot. Yes.
So, like,
Um.
if Dickinson is out, is Kansas just done for? Not that he's gonna be out forever, but like
Well, I mean, they also didn't have
they had
two.
another guy on the bench with a gold chain. He
Yes,
looks
that
stupid
was
too.
Shaquille Moore, and then I think Rylan Griffin was also out. So you had three guys. You could. I'd say they're nine deep, which is
Okay.
better than normal.
Yep.
So.
All right. So my list. Well, I have RJ Davis on my list,
Mm,
but I did write down a question of, because he's on most people's list.
mhm,
So I said, does he make it if Carolina isn't good? Because I do have questions about it. I don't think this Carolina team's gonna be terrible. I think they're gonna make the tournament. They'll
mhm,
probably be a top five seed in the tournament. Like they'll
mhm.
be on the five line or better. I don't think they're gonna be bad,
Yep.
but I guess I was just wondering if. So I also wrote like, does the team matter to you? If you have a guy that is dropping 35 points a game, say 25 points a game for a team that goes like 20 and 13.
Hmm.
right? Can that guy be an All-American?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it depends what we're basing it. It depends all what they base it off of.
Yeah,
Is it does it do you just want your team or do you want that the player?
yeah.
So it's it's very tough.
All right, so I wrote down 10. I didn't separate them. I was like, I'll just pick 10 guys.
Hmm.
I wrote down. I got Mark Sears,
Oh, yep, he's on mine.
R.J. Davis, Cooper Flag, Norshad O'Meara.
Really?
Yeah, because I think Baylor's going to be really good.
Okay.
Alex Caravan, L.J. Cryer, Jonell Davis, Ryan Kalkbrenner, and I I wanted to pick someone from Rutgers, so I picked Ace Bailey.
Hmm.
Um, because I have a question later for you where I want you to pick a sleeper, and I want you to pick a team not in the AP top 25 that could do damage, and I wanted to pick Rutgers, but Rutgers is 25.
Yep. I think it is very disrespectful that you didn't put Wade Taylor on that list.
It was there.
That's
It was
very
there.
disrespectful. That's I I'm disappointed.
I
That's
I thought about
that's disrespectful. I can't believe you.
it. I really wanted to put Tyrese Proctor on him.
Yeah, I bet you did. Um, all right. I guess I'll go then. I have my 10. So I'm going Fletcher Lawyer, Cooper Flag, Hunter Dickinson, Wade Taylor, RJ Davis, DJ Wagner, Mark Sears, Alex Caravan, Janai Broom from Auburn, and Ryan Kalkbrenner.
Yeah, the broom one may. I should have done that because another spoiler. I do have Auburn as a. What do I have Auburn at?
Well, I was
I
trying
have
to look
Auburn.
up.
I have Auburn as one of my one seeds.
Yeah, I was trying to look up Auburn's schedule, but then the Virginia lad came up, so I couldn't look that up.
They do play. They play Duke at Duke, I believe.
Yes, so that would
Um,
be a good test.
but I do. Yeah, I do think Auburn's going to be good this year. So having an
Yes,
Auburn player on that list does make sense.
yes, that's my 10.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we get Alabama is going to be good. Creighton is probably going to be good. UConn's going to be good.
Them will be
Houston,
good.
yeah, So I think, yeah, the North Side of Mirror one. I think my mindset was I think Baylor's going to be good.
I can't believe you picked him over Wade Taylor.
I
Like,
I
what?
I thought he was good at Miami last year, and I just thought going to Baylor was going to make. I
First of all,
don't
how
know
can you pick him over Jeremy Roach if you're going Baylor?
because I
Because you're
think
biased?
no,
He did you wrong?
I think a forward is more likely to get recognition than a guard.
Okay.
And but if the committee says they don't schedule based off storylines,
Mm.
they would love for Baylor to play Duke in the
Oh,
tournament.
yeah, they would. And then Jeremy Roach would probably go off for like 40.
You know who I'm concerned about is Duke has to play Stanford this year, which is where oh um so terrible names. Um,
Why are you
oh,
concerned about that?
no. I'm not really concerned about. I don't want to look it up though. Um, oh my goodness, I have to look it up. I feel terrible looking this up.
Are you talking about the player
Yes,
who transferred?
yeah,
Like on the roster?
yeah. The
Oh,
uh, the
your
the super
boy,
pesky
um, Jalen Blake's.
Jalen Blakes. Yeah, Jalen Blakes. So Jalen Blakes
Yes.
is probably going to start Stanford, and they're going to play at Duke. Um, he's going to play so hard.
What if he just goes
Um,
off for like 40 and disappears off the
see,
face of the earth after that?
he won't because he's terrible at offense.
Okay.
Um, all right, so we got all right. So teams. What do you think is gonna be the toughest conference this year?
SEC.
I said Big 12.
Okay.
I looked at the SEC and I did want to say the SEC, but I wrote down um, Arizona's new to the Big 12 this year, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many switches, it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah,
Colorado is
right.
also new to the Big 12. Or were they there last year?
Maybe.
And then Houston came last year.
Yes.
So I thought with the Big 12, with the addition of Arizona, who I think is going to be a really good team, and Colorado, who I think is going to be a decent team,
Hmm.
I thought that moved them just. I think that Arizona ad moves them just ahead of the SEC, in my opinion.
Even though the SEC has 7 ranked teams.
Yes,
Okay.
because I think that quality of the Big 12
Okay. That's
is
fair.
better than SEC.
Okay.
Because one, right, we have to have Kentucky's ranked, but it's not Kentucky anymore,
Hmm.
right? This is Mark Pope's Kentucky, so he's got to prove himself.
Right. He does have a good roster, though. I will give him that.
Yes, but he doesn't have a Kentucky roster, right? Like
Right.
it's not he.
Right.
It's not like Mark Pope inherited Kentucky.
Right.
So I'll be interested to see what Kentucky does. And, Tennessee will be good. Um, Alabama.
Hmm.
Um, it. So yeah, I like the Big 12 a little bit better.
You'll
Um,
see how good Kentucky is early when they take on Duke in the Champions Classic in
yeah,
10 days.
I think Duke's gonna smack them.
You think so? What if Kentucky smacks
I
Duke?
think I think Duke wins by over 20.
So then that would mean Michigan State plays Kansas. That actually might be an upset too.
Yeah, I don't trust early season Kansas right now.
Mm, okay. You don't trust late season Kansas either.
I- Kansas can't. Here's a nugget for you, courtesy of I see. I may look like I don't do research, but I do listen to college basketball podcasts, and they do the research for me.
Mm-hmm.
On the college basketball podcast with Gary Parrish and Matt Norlander, so they don't like sue us. Kansas, when they've been the number one team in the preseason AP poll,
Mm-hmm.
has never made it past the Sweet 16.
All right. That's okay. That's fair.
Um, so here's where for number one seeds.
Okay.
Right now, Lenardi has Kansas, Duke, Alabama, and Houston. The top four seeds in KenPom are Duke, Auburn, Bama, and UConn.
Mm-hmm.
So for my number one seeds, I think I only asked you, I think, about the final four, but I did write down my one seeds. I wrote down Duke, Alabama. I went kind of chalkish because I think you have to go chalkish in the until you see the bracket. I think
Right.
you have to kind of go chalk with the final four and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So for my one seeds, I said Duke, Alabama, Houston, and Auburn.
Okay.
I think those would be the four. So those are my four best teams in
Mm-hmm.
college basketball.
Okay. My ones are I'm going Alabama, Houston because Houston looked really good against A&M. I'm gonna go. Guess I'll go Duke, and I'm gonna go. This may be a little dicey, but I think I'm gonna go UNC.
Oh, so you're thinking higher. So see, I think you used to be okay. So I put Duke as a one seed because I think the ACC is going to be better, which is going to help Duke, but they're not going to be good enough to beat Duke, the team. So like you're going to see a lot more top 50 ACC teams, but you're
Hmm.
not going to see a lot of like top 15 ACC teams.
I think if North Carolina can beat Kansas in Fog Allen and then also win at home against Alabama early on, and then they don't slip up too much, it's going to be very hard for me not to give them a
Mhm.
1 seed at the end of the year. Like if they beat them and then they have Florida in a ranked UCLA, And if they sweep that,
Yep.
it's going to be hard for me not to reward them at the end of the year if they don't slip up.
Yep. Well, it's like you're reading my mind on my notes here. So the transition is how many games can you lose and still be a one seed? Obviously, quality of wins matters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at some point, you can't beat a whole bunch of teams but still lose 10 games, meaning they're a one
Mm-hmm.
seed. So
I'm gonna.
what's your limit for games a team can lose?
My limit is that's that's so tough because
I guess it'd be over under 5, right? It's kind of what people are looking at. Like the
yeah,
basic question is, can you lose more than 5?
I'd say 6 games. Six is my stretch, but somewhere in the 5-6 range because it depends who you lose to.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose through teams 1 through 5 in the rankings, you can absolutely still be a number one seed.
Yep.
But the other thing is, you could lose 1 through 5, but you have to play them again. That's
Yep.
my thing. Is you can't just drop games, and then there's also no margin for error too if you have 5 games. But they need to be caliber wins that prove that you're a number one seed. So I'd say 5 is my cutoff. 6 would be an exception.
Yeah.
Like if you lose to Duke, Kansas, North Carolina, Auburn, and I don't know, Baylor, but then you beat 5 other great teams, then
Mm-hmm.
it basically cancels out.
Yeah. That's where Duke's kind of at. Where I'm thinking like Duke can lose to like a Illinois if they beat Arizona, Kansas, and like Auburn.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, you guys have got Kentucky, Arizona, Kansas, Auburn. Louisville won't be bad either,
Yeah.
and then you should,
I
I
mean,
mean,
they're not going to lose the game anyways. But
you might lose to North Carolina.
if I had to pick, I have Duke losing 3 to 4 games. I think they'll get caught by somebody. Um, maybe lose to UNC.
Honestly, I could see them losing to UNC, Kentucky, or Auburn, and then like one more random one.
I was thinking Auburn. I think they're going to beat Kansas, Kentucky, Illinois. That Arizona one's going to be close, but I think they're going to win
Mm.
it. So I could see Auburn, UNC, and 1 or 2 upsets, but not upsets. Like a game at Georgia Tech or something like
Yeah,
that.
or like like at SMU, like
Yep.
just what like they'll lose that, and the people will be like, "Oh, what's wrong?"
Yeah.
And then they'll just sweep the
Yeah.
rest of the season.
Boston College tickets are, if you don't buy the season ticket package, it costs like, if you go on like StubHub and
Hmm.
buy any ticket for a Boston College basketball game season this year, you can get one for under $15.
Really?
The Duke game is $235.
No.
Yeah, that's the cheapest ticket on reselling sites for Duke BC right now is over $200.
Oh, that's actually horrible.
So
Mm.
hopefully my wife doesn't buy it because she bought us like 2 years ago. She bought us tickets, and I didn't ask her how much it cost because I don't buy the tickets because I know how much they are. Like I'm
Right.
like I want to go, but I'm not gonna
Right.
spend, because I'm gonna bring my wife with me, so I'm not gonna spend $400 on a
Right.
college basketball game.
Right. Yeah. It's expensive. That's where the NIL money
Yeah.
comes from your pocket.
So we had our top four, our 4 seeds, but obviously your number 1 seeds are not necessarily going to be your final four.
Mm.
So my final four, I have Duke, UConn, Houston, and Baylor.
I- I'm gonna say my final four. But this is always so tough too because there's gonna be that one team that
Yeah, and it's all
you know,
matchups and everything, and
yeah. So I'm gonna say my final four is gonna be Duke, This is tough. I'm gonna say Duke, UConn because they've been there. Say North Carolina, and I'm gonna say Arkansas. It's just a throw it out there.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's a
Throw
good
it out
pick.
there one. I'm just gonna throw a random one out there and say Arkansas.
All right, last question. Sleeper team.
Okay.
So a team that
Hmm.
is not in the top 25.
Okay.
Um, so I'll read them to you. You can look them up. But team that's not in the top 25 that you feel like is, either going to make some noise in being ranked in the top 10 at some point, or is
Hmm.
going to make a good run to maybe the Elite Eight in the tournament. So right now, our top 25 teams, obviously, I probably could just read the last couple because most of these are obvious. So, Kansas, Bama, UConn, Houston, Iowa State, Gonzaga, Duke, Baylor, North Carolina, Arizona, Auburn, Tennessee, A&M, Purdue, Creighton, Arkansas. Oh, one of mine doesn't work. Oh man. So here's kind of the bottom half of teams that you may not realize are ranked. Indiana, Marquette, Texas, Cincinnati, Florida, UCLA, Kentucky, Ole Miss, and Rutgers.
So you want me to
I
pick
will
a
tell
team in?
you, no, a team outside the top 25.
Okay. Okay. So
I wrote down Indiana, not realizing that they were in the top 25. So I'll take that back. My two teams I wrote were Wake and Charleston.
okay.
I feel good about Charleston making a run to make the tournament and then maybe
Okay.
winning a game or two. I think with the Charleston's usually a good team,
Hmm.
and I'm always a guy that believes in. I think people just have bad luck sometimes,
Hmm.
and I think Chris Mack is just like, I think he's just gonna do good at Charleston. I don't know, like I just think that he's gonna take over the program and just have some success with it.
I'm gonna say. So here's my three sleeper teams. I'm going three sleeper teams here. My first sleeper team is Ohio State.
Uh huh.
My second sleeper team is Louisville
Okay.
with Pat Kelsey.
Yep.
My third sleeper team I just had, but I don't know where they went. Oh, sorry. I gotta go with my guy Tom Izzo.
Okay. Yep. Yep. You
Those
know
are
who's
my
another good?
three.
You know who's another good pick that's not on that list is. I mean, they have to prove themselves, obviously, but a St. John's.
Yeah, I don't like Rick Pitino.
Yeah, but yeah, he's not invited on the podcast.
Yeah, he's not.
John
He's
Calipari, you can come on the
yeah.
podcast.
But Rick Pitino's not invited.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think looking at kind of Ken Palm stuff, um, maybe like a BYU. I know BYU. A team like BYU is all dependent upon Gonzaga, right?
Mm,
Because actually no, BYU switched divisions though, so maybe they're not as dependent on the Gonzaga thing anymore. It's going to be interesting what happens to the WCC
BC. Yeah.
um, once Gonzaga leaves. In terms of like, can they sort of keep up the competition? I mean, they're going to lose. They're going to have to schedule big time because they're going to lose
Right.
Gonzaga as their like marquee
Hmm.
opponent to like play against.
Hmm.
But yeah, I like Wake a little bit. Yeah, you good call Michigan State. Michigan should be better this year. Um, Pitt should be better. Um, Memphis should have a decent squad. Um, I think Miami is gonna be terrible. Um, UCF is UCF. I was gonna bring up this question, but I didn't want to go super negative. Did Mikey Williams go to UCF? Is that where he ended
Yes.
up?
Yes. He
I'll be
did.
interested to see how he ends up doing this
Yes.
year. Yeah, I don't expect much of him, but I'll be interested to see
Hmm.
like if he, if he's even a like over 10 point per game kind of player.
Well, we play him first game of the year, so A&M will lock him up. So
Yeah.
who is your here? I'm gonna add. I don't know if you have anything else on your little paper
Nope, no,
sheet.
I do have my notes.
All right, then I'm gonna add our last segment here. What is gonna be your game of the week as we go into this first week of college basketball? What's your game of the week? I've got mine.
Let me
I'll
see
give you a
here.
couple minutes to sift through, but I'm gonna tell you my game of the week right now.
All
North
right.
Carolina versus Kansas is my game of the week. An early clash of potential Final Four contenders.
That's not right away, right? That's got to be like a Saturday game or something, right?
No, I think it might be a Friday. I think it's a Friday night. I
All right.
think.
So Monday, I know there's nothing much good on Monday. I
Yeah.
know there's like one ranked
I think it's
thing
like
happening
Baylor
in
Gonzaga, but it's at
yeah,
midnight.
it's at like
So,
midnight or something.
yeah, nobody will be watching that.
Yeah. So Tuesday, I assume there's probably not
No,
much
I think it all
good.
starts on like Friday. There's a couple other
Yeah,
good ones this
yeah. I'll
weekend.
look at Friday and Saturday because I
Yeah.
assume all these other ones are kind
I
of.
know Baylor plays Arkansas. Then there's one more, but that's my game of the week.
Let me see if I can find a good mid major
Okay.
that I'm not gonna watch that I'm gonna talk about as being good. Um, that Texas A&M versus Texas A&M Commerce that
Yeah.
might be a barn burner.
Might be.
Uh, let's see. We got Montana. Okay, let me go to Saturday here.
You're going to Gonzaga
Nothing
versus
that.
Arizona State on Sunday. You'll be front row for that one.
Yeah, nothing that's jumped. Okay, okay. So there's I got a potential one so far. Um, kind of goes along the lines of something you were talking about earlier. So let's see. Um,
On versus Sacred Heart.
you got the Arkansas Baylor one.
Yeah.
That's good. You know, I Auburn Houston. So I'm gonna say I like Arkansas Baylor just a little bit more than Auburn Houston,
Mm.
but I'm gonna say my game of the week because I think you're right. I think this is a really interesting storyline this year, and the proximity of the schools a little bit. I'm gonna go with Saturday, Tennessee at Louisville,
Okay. That's a good one.
right? Because that's gonna show us
Yeah.
where Louis and it's at Louisville, right? So it's going to give
Right.
them a little bit of an advantage there. I know that's a big thing. I know Louisville, Kentucky's huge, and with my wife being from Tennessee,
Mm.
I know she doesn't like the Kentucky schools.
Mm.
So I think there's a fan base piece to it.
Yep.
Um, I mean, if Louisville can win that game,
Oh, that'd be
I mean that
huge.
just because
Yeah.
we're a podcast I was listening to was talking about like what's like the funniest outcome that could happen, and they're talking
Hmm.
about Louisville. Let me see here, like Louisville's first game, which is probably on Monday. They're playing. Let's see here, they're playing some team that's like not any good.
They
They're
lose.
playing more at
Yeah.
yeah. So they're like what if like this offseason we're like, all right, Louisville's gone up in the rankings. People are kind of thinking, okay, they're turning things around, and then they go
Mm.
play more at stay and they lose by like
They just
12.
lose.
Like,
Yeah. Like same old Louisville.
yeah. I mean, I vote for all the ACC teams except for UNC, so that way the more wins they get, the better it is for Duke.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I bet.
But I think that would be a good. I mean, Louisville's got it. They've got a schedule. They got
Yeah, they've got
Tennessee,
potential.
they got
Yep.
Indiana, they got Ole Miss, then they go Duke, they go to
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky. Um, they got a little bit of. I mean, they can lose. They can lose to Tennessee, and if it's respectable,
Right.
then according to ESPN, Tennessee at Louisville, the cheapest ticket is $55,
Wow.
right? Duke at BC,
I
according to
found the
ESPN,
cheapest for 166.
$166.
Yeah.
So Louisville, Kentucky, these states are right next to each other. $55 versus $166.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at the cheapest Duke tickets on, right, the Auburn game, $599.
Yeah.
George Mason, $138.
Yep.
Like you can't afford to go watch. So,
Yeah.
which is why Duke is the face of college basketball.
God. Is that where that's what we're ending on, huh?
It's undeniable.
Okay.
I mean, the UNC game, $1,400.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'd go on a
What
vacation for that.
I know. One of these days, I'm gonna get down. I want to get to a semi competitive Duke game.
Okay.
Like I don't want to go to like the main game. You know,
Hmm.
I want to go to the I don't know the Clemson game or something like
Hmm.
that. So right now the cheapest Clemson ticket, but that's at Clemson, is $109. Right,
Hmm.
I kind of want to go, and right, so that's $200. I can probably get to if I buy tickets far enough ahead of time. I can probably fly to North Carolina, maybe like $200, something
Hmm.
like that, right? So like that's another $400, and me and my wife go. That's $600, and I get a hotel room. So like I could probably do the whole thing for $1,000,
Hmm.
which like would not be ideal, but like it would get me to Cameron. It
Right.
would. My wife and I met down in North Carolina,
Oh,
South
that's
Carolina.
nice.
It would
Yeah.
give us like a day to kind of enjoy the area a little bit. Um, so that's kind of I think in the next 5 years that's my goal is at
Cool.
some
Okay.
point to pick a game to get down to.
Okay.
I was thinking on my run the other day, I was thinking about should I just go all in and do the K Academy for $10,000.
You only live once.
I know. That's what they say. Um, I don't know. So, all right, that was good. All right, so we'll have to figure out a little bit of consistency.
Yep.
I think we'll pick a day, but we'll figure out I think we can jump on the podcast after kind of a really big game if
Mhm.
something kind of big happens. But I think last year we aimed for Sundays. I think that's Sunday, Monday. I've been trying to do a little bit less schoolwork on the weekends without coaching. I guess now that I'm going to start picking up coaching again. But I'm a little bit more free on Sundays than I used to be. Um, so yeah, we'll find a time that sort of fits the schedule
Yeah.
for recapping what's
Good.
going on.
Yeah.
All right. That was good. That's a good return. All right.
Good
So
return.
until next time, everyone
Next time.
enjoy this first week of college basketball. Best time of the year.